And finance editor John Carney, that Cleveland Cliffs statement from the CEO there, it kind of highlights this was never a nip-on or nothing situation for U.S. Steel.
That's right. U.S. Steel did not have to choose to try to sell themselves to Nippon Steel. They did, and I think that was a mistake. I mean, the CEO is admitting that they made a mistake by trusting the Biden administration. I do not doubt that he is correct, that they did not do it properly. The Biden administration has shown that they are willing to politicize everything. However, they are not going to have better luck under the Trump administration because, frankly, it is a national security threat to have U.S. Steel be run by a foreign company. The amount of monitoring we would have to do over U.S. Steel would be so extreme to make sure that they weren't being made vulnerable to to a disagreement that could happen 20 years from now, 30 years from now, 50 years from now between the U.S. and Japan, where they could say, okay, we're going to shut down those U.S. Steel plants, would be so extreme that it's much better to say we're not going to allow a foreign takeover of U.S. Steel. Much simpler.
So where do you think this is going next? Because obviously there's strong feelings on both sides of this, and it's not a clean partisan issue,
right,
as you just referenced, at all. If there's going to be an appeals process, like let's say they win these appeals, then you've got Trump, who I guess is against the deal also. So what now? What now?
Well, I think the Trump administration has actually shown that they're very good at making the case for trade connected to national security. The Biden administration, I actually think, just did this out of pure politics.
Yep.
They were pandering to the unions. The Trump administration actually will be able to show that there is a national security threat. Look, they put tariffs on steel and aluminum originally to keep those industries upright in the U.S. because they were failing mostly because China was dumping on the entire world, which brought down the global price of steel. What Trump is going to be able to show is that this actually does have to be a U.S.-controlled company. Look, Japan is a great ally, but George Washington warned us long ago not to become dependent on foreign entanglements, no matter how great the ally is. Japan is a great country. We do not want to be dependent on them for our steel production.
Or anyone.
On anyone, no matter how great of an ally they are.
And Nippon owning U.S. Steel is an entanglement by its very
Absolutely.
definition. And you said the magic word, tariff. On to what the Washington Post was claiming, that President Trump's tariff plans will be weaker than he initially proposed and only cover, quote, critical imports.
But the president-elect quickly setting the record straight on Truth Social on this issue. He said this: the story in the Washington Post, quoting so-called anonymous sources, which don't exist, incorrectly states that my tariff policy will be pared back. That is wrong. The Washington Post knows it's wrong. It's just another example of fake news. So what exactly is going on here? Is this Trump posturing? Do you need to have the credible threat of this alive to use it as a stick, or is there something deeper here?
Well, I think Trump is not bluffing. He's telling the rest of the world there will be tariffs. You have to come to the table with the Trump administration and negotiate away your unfair trade practices. If you do that, you can avoid tariffs. But if you don't do that, you will not avoid them. And just saying, oh, well, we don't make anything that important, if you're Germany and you're making household appliances, those might not be strategically important, you'll still get the tariffs if you keep up your unfair trade practices. And I actually agree with Trump here. The sources behind that story, as far as I can tell, are non-existent, because my sources in the Trump administration say we are coming forward with tariffs on everything as the opening bid. If people negotiate in good faith with us, they may not get the tariffs, but the assumption should be by every country in the world that if you do not cut a fair deal with the U.S., you will be a recipient of the Trump tariffs.
And an offset of any tariff would be a corporate tax cut.
Absolutely.
That it has an offsetting impact. And imports are only 14% of our GDP.
The business survey that came out today from S&P Global actually showed that business confidence is rising because of the tariffs, because U.S. businesses say we are going to be protected from the unfair competition abroad. A lot of the reporting is fake. It assumes that the business community in the U.S. does not like tariffs. In fact, what they want is what Trump is aiming for, which is a fair deal abroad so we can sell our stuff abroad. And if we can't get that, then we're going to protect our domestic market.
As President Trump and team get ready to 2 weeks from now take office, move into Washington, and what Joe Biden is doing is trying to make that job that much more difficult. The biggest albatross or anchor around this nation is really the debt, the $36 trillion plus in debt, $8 trillion added to the federal debt in under 4 years, and an additional $1 trillion spent out of the Treasury Department by the Biden administration, and you see the market's reaction. Today, the 10-year yield topped 4.7%. It's at a 7-month high. That is sending a message that it's going to be difficult to you're going to have to be very careful about spending.
Yeah, I think actually the 10-year very well may go above 5%, which will be a very bad thing for the stock market because it becomes very hard for stocks to compete with a super safe treasury that pays you a 5% yield. So what Trump needs to do is make sure that, and that's a fear of inflation from all of this government spending. What Trump needs to do is make sure. Look, Biden's going to try to spend every dime he can in the next 2 weeks. It's like that movie Brewster's Millions, where they try to spend all the money at once. That's what's happening in the Biden White House right now. They're trying to spend everything they can. What Trump needs to do, though, is by deregulating and cutting taxes, he can expand the supply side of the U.S. economy and therefore counter the inflationary pressures being created by the Biden spending.
Doge, say it with me. Because it's about deregulation.
Absolutely. We need that deregulation coming through, and we need the tax cuts to be extended and preserved, because if we don't get that, we won't get the supply boost we need to counter the inflationary pressure.
Love it. John Carney, love you.